All right, Iowa fans, as you gear up for the next women's basketball game, which I understand will be a Final Four game, we will talk some football. So we will try to bide the time and get you there. And we do so, of course, each and every week. It's Tuesday, 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 where it counts in the heartland there. We've got Corey Brad on the line, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Get on over there for your Iowa women's college basketball coverage. And this is exciting stuff, I know, for you, Corey, and legions of fans that follow Iowa athletics and want all the teams to be successful. And right now, the women are approaching historic accomplishments.
Yeah, not many people are expecting them to win Friday, Mark. They're 11.5-point underdogs against the South Carolina team that's 36-0. That just kills you on the glass and pushes you around. It's just a ridiculous team. They got post players 6'5", National Player of the Year last year. You got a post player 6'7". They're going to be a handful, but I'm just excited. It's the first time since '93 that the women have made the Final Four. It's an incredible accomplishment, and I've had a ton of fun talking Iowa women's hoops. We had Tania Davis, former Iowa coach, former Iowa player Tania Davis, now coaching at Nebraska Omaha. She joined me for a couple of post-game shows late last week. It's been a fun March. I know the men disappointed, but it's been a fun March. And as we turn the calendar to April, and regardless of what happens this weekend, Iowa basketball will officially be over this weekend, Mark, because even if they were to win the national championship Sunday. So next week, we officially turn the corner. At least I do. I officially turn the corner to spring football. I know we're going to talk spring football today, which will be fun. We got some news recently. I don't know that it had dropped last week when we were on the show. Maybe it had. Kirk Ferentz announcing that Seth Anderson, transfer from Charleston Southern, is dealing with an injury, as is Jacob Bostic. That's unfortunate because they are thin at wide receiver. And the other news that broke in the past week, Mark, was Brody Brecht deciding to basically give up football. He's going to be focusing on baseball. And it's ironic because last week we talked about it on this very show. I remember saying to you, and I listened back to it yesterday, I remember saying to you, hey, I don't know how long this kid's going to stick around because it's inevitable. He's throwing 100-mile-per-hour fastballs. He's a projected first-round MLB draft pick. Probably not wise to keep playing football. And more power to him if he wanted to. I applaud him for doing it last season. And heck, he played some, Mark. It was a position that struggled. He comes back off injury. I think he started a couple of games. I was excited about Brody Brecht when he committed out of Ankeny. And remember, that was the class where you had Arlen Bruce and Brody Brecht out of the same high school. Remember, Arlen had transferred up from Olathe, Kansas. Now they're both gone. I saw Arlen participating in spring practice down at Oklahoma State. So best wishes to Brody. I'll be following him on the mound. I'm not a huge baseball guy, but I will be following him on the mound. I think he's making the right decision. And it sounds like baseball is his passion. I haven't had a chance to talk about this on my channel yet, but it's not. I know some people are going to draw comparisons to what Connor McCaffrey did for Iowa basketball. He gave up baseball for basketball when most people thought, hey, he's better at baseball. Connor McCaffrey was never projected as a first-round draft pick in either sport. So it's a little bit different. I think Connor McCaffrey, you could argue, made an excellent choice because he's launched his career into coaching. I think it sounds like he's going to pursue coaching in some form of basketball, whether it's high school to start and then go to college or whatever the case may be. I guess he'll get a job somewhere as a GA and launch his college coaching career. So I think both guys made good decisions, and it's another hit to the depth of Iowa football's wide receiver room. They've got two walk-ons right now listed on the depth chart. So as much as we wanted to get excited about adding a receiver out of the portal and Seth Anderson, let's not forget you lost Keegan Johnson, you lost Arlen Bruce, you're losing Brody Brecht, and that's off of a receiving core, Mark, that was really porous last year. Now, Keegan Johnson didn't play much, but they still got problems to work out. I keep hearing they're going to go to the portal after spring. In fact, the guy from Georgia, I think his name got brought up a week or two ago, the guy that's still in the portal. What is his name?
Dominic Blaylock.
Somebody reached out to me and said that they think I was going to potentially pursue him. I don't know if that's based on rumors or good information. I have no idea, but they're going to have to go after somebody now because they just don't have the numbers. And right now, the depth chart, you've got Nico Ragaini. He better stay healthy. You've got Reese Osgood, All right, who's a Wisconsin native, who's a redshirt freshman, standing at 5'11", 176, walk on. You've got Deontay Vines, better stay healthy, and then Alec Wick, who played a little last year, but he's also a walk on from Iowa City. It's a thin group. Seth Anderson not listed, as I said. Jacob Bostic battling injury. They'll get 3 more guys here, the freshman class coming in this summer. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because the closer and closer we get to the spring game, the more and more I anticipate what it will be like watching Cade McNamara. Because the thing about it is, I'm sure they'll make progress this over the next couple of weeks, and I guarantee you they're making progress in different places. But you and I both know, Mark, given how bad the offensive line was much of last year, given how poor the wide receiving group played last year, or at least how uninvolved they were with the offense, they're not going to take some massive jump, over a 3-week period in spring. If they're going to be good enough to get by and improve to be a top 75 offense this fall, it has to be not only through spring, but through summer conditioning, and then, of course, through fall camp. So that spring game in a couple of weeks will be very intriguing, very interesting, because Cade McNamara is going to be dealing with a depleted wide receiving core and an offensive line that I think is probably still not there. And I'll just be fascinated to see how he does, because we hope that they all improve. We hope that they all progress, but I don't see a huge jump in the coming couple of weeks.
I would think that wide receivers who progress through their current spring practice see that they're maybe not in a situation that they desire to be in for whatever reason, usually playing time, that they can look at the Iowa situation. And even though it's not a wide receiver friendly offense, it's still a big program with a veteran quarterback who knows how to deliver the ball. And it's just a high profile program. And it's a program that produces professionals, not necessarily at that position, but it's still an opportunity to play and to step. And Dominic Blaylock, absolutely. If there's nothing involved off the field, if it's just strictly based on talent, my goodness, yes, you go after that guy. And I got to think Cade McNamara is working his contacts.
Great point. I mean, and then let's not forget too, we can't understate the loss. I say loss because they were the first Power 5 to offer him, Isaac TeSlaa, who at the time, I mean, you're thinking, boy, they're going to get this kid from Hillsdale, and then all of a sudden his recruitment takes off. Did I ever tell you, Mark? I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second. I was down in Dallas. All right, just a couple of days before TeSlaa committed to Arkansas. And what's ironic is I had just traveled through Fayetteville. I'd went to the stadium and just kind of checked it out, and went through part of their, the bottom concourse of the stadium. And later that weekend, Isaac TeSlaa posts pictures, enjoyed my visit. So he was there. Isaac TeSlaa was there in Fayetteville the same day I was there at the stadium, the same day I was, ironically enough. Didn't go there to talk to him. And then what's crazy about it, Mark, and this is, I know people maybe the chat won't find this too interesting, but I thought it was just fascinating. I'm down at the stockyards. I don't know if you've ever been to the stockyards in Fort Worth, but I'm down at the stockyards where they walk the Longhorns down at 4 or 5 in the evening, right? And I'm sitting there eating a pretzel or doing something, and some guy walks along, and I don't even know why I struck up a conversation with him. I don't think it was anything he was wearing. I just struck up a conversation with him. We get to talking about football. And he's like, yeah, my son plays for Hillsdale College in Michigan. And I'm like, Hillsdale College? He's like, yeah, he's a receiver. Or no, excuse me. He said he's a quarterback. He's the backup quarterback there. He's going to be the starter next year. And I don't remember the guy's name. I feel ashamed for not remembering his name. But turns out this was a teammate of Isaac TeSlaa. I mean, this was his dad. It's just weird. And so we ended up talking about this kid's decision, and it was a fascinating conversation. The guy started following me on Twitter, but it was just weird. Like, how does that? It was totally random. I had the same thing happen to me this past month, Mark. I was down in San Diego, went to a coffee shop on the coast, ran into a guy I went to high school with. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. It is weird. Those kind of things have happened to me. I was aware of your travels through the Southwest, Arkansas, Texas, etc. But you also went out to San Diego. I didn't.
Yes,
know that.
We were in San Diego late February.
Nice.
for about 4 or 5 days. Not a real long trip. Wish it was longer. It wasn't real warm down there. 50s. Frankly, it was almost as warm back here as it was down there. Southern California, they've been having all of California with the floods and just cooler weather. They've had some weird stuff down there, but it was a fun trip, and it was nice to go down and see the coast, and got some pictures of some sea lions. And
yeah, I
nice
love you probably, I have visited the sea lions down there in San Diego a few times.
La Jolla, right?
It's yes.
Yeah, beautiful place.
It's one of my favorite cities.
And Iowa basketball next November, later this November, Mark, they announced there's going to be like the first ever San Diego Invitational. So it's one of the Thanksgiving weekend tournament. I think it's a 14 tournament, and Iowa's going to be playing in that San Diego tournament. A very ironic. So we'll see if, I don't know if I'll make it down there or not, but beautiful area to travel to. And like I said, kind of odd weather recently, but you can get good flight prices. We ended up flying into LA, but it was a fun time.
Very cool. So we were going to go through the depth charts. We got a super chat coming in. Let's pick that off in case there's something there. We've got our buddy Jason Moose, Michigan fan, showing up. Hello, Mark and Corey. Jason, thank you so much for being here and for the contribution. Appreciate that.
Mark, by the way, before we go on to depth charts, last season, it was after my prediction for the 2021 Big Ten Championship game, and all the Michigan fans that got riled up, and some loved me and some hated me. And I'm sure there's some people that still hate me because of that for some reason, unbeknownst to me. But I'm just curious, have we talked about the dynamic of Cade McNamara joining Iowa and how that's going to affect my relationship with Michigan fans?
Well, how is it going to affect
I don't know.
relationship with Michigan fans?
They're not on the regular schedule, but don't you think, as much as there are fans who are saying, I wish Cade McNamara all the best, let's just think about how people are on social media and how fans are and how people are. If Cade McNamara starts having success, there's going to be Michigan fans dogging on him and ripping him because they don't want to believe that he could possibly be a loss for Michigan, right? For the most part, the reason people are wishing him the best or wished him the best is because they know, hey, we got J.J. McCarthy to fall back on. He wasn't going to be used anyways.
Sure.
But if there's any inkling that Cade McNamara is better than they thought, I think that's going to ruffle some feathers of some fans. Don't you think?
Well, it's going to ruffle feathers, or they will capitalize on if Cade McNamara and the offense struggle. They will certainly let you and others have it as well.
Yeah. I just look forward to that.
I will stand on the sideline and just have fun watching it all. I had a commenter just late last night comment to one of the videos that, at the first several videos that he watched, he just figured that I was a Michigan and Big Ten homer. And now that he has watched more videos, he's, come around to the quality of content and subscribed and so forth. But I just found it funny that he thought I was a Michigan homer.
Well, you are a Big Ten homer, aren't you? I mean,
no,
you just don't like the word homer. You're a Big Ten guy, Mark. Embrace it. You're an Ohio State guy. That makes you a Big Ten guy.
Every so often, somebody will call me that. There's a Georgia guy in particular that will, and he doesn't say it in a spiteful, mean way. He's not trying to insult me. He just says, Mark, and he'll throw that in the conversation all the time. I know you're a Big Ten guy, and I'll let him know I'm not a Big Ten guy. Here, I am not a Big Ten guy.
Okay.
In private, I'm a Big Ten guy. Sure. Okay. I will be authentic about that. Do I root for the Big Ten? Absolutely. I root for the Big Ten.
Okay.
Every game. But any sport, even though I've been detached from basketball, I was rooting for the Big Ten in every NCAA tournament game. Absolutely.
I think it's fair to say Paul Feinbaum is an SEC guy away from the mic and behind the mic. Is that fair?
He works for the SEC network, though.
Well, he didn't always.
No, he didn't, but he worked as an Alabama radio guy covering sports. So then now he works for the SEC network. Sure, he's an SEC guy, but I have platforms all through college football, so I do my very best to be neutral.
But they also bring him onto national shows to provide his take on college football. See, that's why I've always had a problem with that, because ESPN is, I guess fair and balanced or fair and unbiased is not really a thing for the worldwide leader. But anyways, I guess that's not important.
I was on our Big Ten show yesterday, taking it to the Big Ten for a lack of difficult non-conference games and calling overall Big Ten scheduling. And I know it has nothing to do with each other. Iowa doesn't have anything to do with Ohio State or Penn State scheduling. They're all separate. But when you put it all together, I called it pathetic a number of times. It's not a strong enough list of opponents in the non-conference for the Big Ten.
See, who does Iowa have on the schedule? You're going to know this quicker than I would, Mark. They got
Iowa State, and it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter. That's who they have. That's who they typically have. Iowa State, and it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter.
I was thinking it doesn't matter Tech, but you could be right. It might just be it doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't remember. There was somebody decent. I mean a decent Group of 5 program.
Yeah.
But I mean, last year we said, well, Nevada was a decent Group of 5 program, and they were terrible. They were awful.
Yeah, the FCS school proved to be a much more difficult challenge. They were 7-3, of course. I'm going to go to the schedule.
You don't have to remind me of that score. Yeah, let me. You're probably pulling this up as I'm doing it.
I am.
Utah State is who I'm thinking of. They also get Western Michigan. Those are 2 solid programs. Western Michigan's had a lot of turnover. And Utah State, you could give me a better idea of recency on Utah State.
Utah State, under Matt Wells and Gary Anderson, former Wisconsin coach, who actually has had 2 stints at Utah State, turned out very good football teams that competed for Mountain West Conference championships. And I'm talking early 2010s to 3 or 4 years ago. And we had Matt Wells on here 3 or 4 times. And then he went to Texas Tech. And then they slipped and had some horrible seasons. Gary Anderson has come back, and not the 22 season, but the 21 season, they won the Mountain West again and went 11-2 and defeated Oregon State in a bowl game.
So what about
seasons ago? Last year, let me find last year because it's not coming to mind. I don't believe that they had a very good season last year.
When was Jordan Love there?
Oh, well, his last season, I'm guessing, was like 2020.
Okay.
20.
I mean, that's obviously been a solid program over the last 3 to 4 years at a minimum. I mean, just based on those what you just said. And am I getting Mike Riley and Gary Anderson confused? Mike Riley was at Oregon State, went to Nebraska, and then did he go back to Oregon State?
Yes.
So Gary Anderson went from Utah State to Wisconsin and then back to Utah State? Or was there
he had a stint at Oregon State as well. That makes it even more confusing. He coached at Oregon State as well. He preceded the second Mike Riley stint.
Okay. That's why I'm getting confused. I'm getting confused with those 2 guys and the West Coast state schools that they coached at and returned to. Okay.
Well, see, I have an advantage over you because I'm covering college football all the time. And so when you're watching women's college basketball, I'm still engaged in college football.
Absolutely.
Utah State finished 6-7. I should have known this, and I did know it if I would have really thought about it. Anyway, they lost a bowl game to Memphis.
Okay, that was not a very good team. And I watched that bowl game, and I was not impressed with Utah State. I think I picked Utah State in that game, and they lose. So they ended up under 500. So I don't know what they looked like last year, minus just knowing the record. So my guess is that first game of the season, Iowa should be a heavy favorite at home. Again, I don't know what they're bringing back. Maybe they're dangerous.
That game has 27-6 written all over it.
Do you have Mountain West talent rankings up on your screen, Mark? Or does Steve Dace have Mountain West talent rankings up on his?
I don't know if he does the anything beyond the Power 5.
And then what about Western Michigan? Did they make a bowl game last year?
Oh my goodness, I confused them, Central and Eastern. I'll have to look them up as well. Central Michigan.
Like I said, Western Michigan lost a number of guys to the portal, including Corey Crooms, who was, I believe, contacted by Iowa, ended up going to Minnesota. So they they lost a lot. And so my guess is, yeah, you're right. Both of those teams, those should be routine victories. And frankly, Iowa State in Ames is going to be difficult, but Iowa State was terrible last year. Despite beating Iowa, they were worst team in the Big 12 by record. So yeah, it is. You're right about the non-conference schedule.
Western Michigan 5-7.
Yeah. So crap. They get a couple of teams coming off crap seasons. Get three teams coming off crap seasons, Mark. Now, at least Iowa State's on the road, but yeah, that is and then first game of the regular season is at Penn State, first game of the Big Ten season at Penn State. So they go from 0 to 60 fast.
Western Michigan played 2 Power Fives. They played, well, what are typically good teams. Michigan State, they lost by 22. They lost by 21 to Pitt.
Now, is it fair to say that game at Penn State is placed very nicely for Iowa, given the change at quarterback for Penn State? I mean, first conference game, I believe that's probably the first conference game for Penn State, I'm assuming. I guess I don't know that. I could look at their schedule. They don't play week 0 or week 1 against a Big Ten team, correct?
No.
They did last year, played Purdue, so they wouldn't. I'm assuming they wouldn't this year. So that would be their first game with a new quarterback. I mean, that's going to be maybe the time to catch them. I know they've got this 5-star kid everybody's excited about, but that might be the time. If there's any good time to go to Happy Valley, it might be then. Now, granted, Iowa's got some changes as well and a change at quarterback, but I think obviously that change is for the better, right? You're not replacing Sean Clifford here. So I'll be intrigued. Obviously, last year, what happened early in the season, Mark, is you lost all your receivers right before the season started. You lose Deontay Vines, you lose Nico Reganey. So injuries can change perspective on all of this. Once we hit August and September, we may say, well, I wish we had Penn State later in the year. But right now, the way the schedule shapes up, I think it looks fairly nice. And then you get Michigan State back at home, which is going to be because Peyton Thorne's back, right?
Yes.
That's going to be an interesting Michigan State team to follow. They've been a roller coaster of a program since Mel Tucker took over. And it will be a very, very interesting first half of the season because of how the schedule is made up.
Our friend Tim Stevens here is feeling vibes of 2015.
Tim. I mean, this, like I said, the schedule is favorable. We know that. I mean, what did I say a couple months ago, Mark? I said if Brian, this is before we knew anything about Brian Ferentz, and I made it very clear on Phil and Brian. I said if they make a change at coordinator, they can go 11-1 or 12-0. I really do believe that. If that's the schedule, that's based on the schedule and based on what they have returning on defense, based on what they have returning on special teams, they can go 12-0. They could go 12-0 with better play calling, maybe a little bit more, certainly more activity in the portal. They still need to go to the portal after spring at receiver. But the schedule, it's not crazy. And I haven't said that in several years. So don't just call me a big Iowa homer, Mark. You and I went through this schedule. Get at Penn State, but it's early against a new quarterback. Michigan State was not very good last year, at least not very consistent. You get Purdue at home. They're completely different. You get Wisconsin on the road, but they're completely different with Luke Fickell. You get Minnesota at home. Iowa's beaten them like 8 times in a row. You get Northwestern on the road, who was terrible last year. You get Rutgers at home. That should be a win. You get Illinois at home. Should be a win, although Illinois is good. That's going to be a good game, but it's at home. You'd favor Iowa. And at Nebraska, they're going through an overhaul. That is a schedule that if you're ever going to look at an Iowa team with a mediocre offense, and that's assuming they can get to mediocre, that's an Iowa schedule that shapes up to be like another 2015 schedule. Now, it may not happen that way. And I certainly don't think there's great chances of them doing that, given the fact that they did not make significant schematic, or they have not made significant schematic changes, coaching changes on that side of the ball. But the schedule shapes up to where I don't think what Tim is saying is crazy to think about. It happened in 2015.
No, it's not crazy. It's unlikely, but it's not crazy.
Well, it's unlikely for anybody, right?
Sure. Yeah, it is. I'm fairly confident in saying that Purdue will be the team that takes the biggest nosedive in the conference, and Illinois might be close behind.
Say that again.
Purdue will be the most.
Okay, so I'm curious.
That is gonna, decline the most.
I'm all for you saying that. I'm curious your take on Illinois. Why are you confident Illinois is going to nosedive?
Well, I'm not nearly as confident, but I think there's a possibility there.
Why? Based on losing your running back and based on losing DeVito, primarily?
And a lot of defense. they had a great secondary last year, and they lost 3
Yeah.
of those 4, including Witherspoon, who was up for the Thorpe Award. Yeah. And Chase Brown's brother plays safety, and he was at the NFL Combine. He was good enough to be at the Combine. He's going to be a draft selection as well.
The only reason I would pause on that is Brett Bielema has done impressive things in a short stint there. And I remember last year at this time saying the same thing to an extent, right? DeVito was new last year. I mean, remember, DeVito was not there 2 years ago.
Yeah. I
So
was sold on DeVito. I was fine with him. He had a good showing at Syracuse.
Okay. Did they even have DeVito at this time last year? Did they have DeVito in the spring?
That's a good question. I don't know for sure. I believe they did, but I'm not sure. Now Luke Altmaier might be a better quarterback, a more talented quarterback coming in from Ole Miss, but he's inexperienced.
He's also a runner.
Yeah.
He can also move. Now DeVito wasn't a statue. He wasn't Spencer Petras, but no, I have I don't have unbridled confidence in Brett Bielema, but I think they're going to be good. And when I say good, I think they're an above 500 team. And that's all it takes for me to be concerned about a game. Like them coming to Iowa, Brett Bielema, the motivation he's going to have to beat Iowa again. Iowa went there to lose and lost a 9-6 ball game last year. I'm going to be nervous for that game either way. I just remember last year at this time saying a similar thing because remember how many guys had left via the portal? And I understand that's early in the transition period still, but he lost a lot of guys last year. And I thought, boy, they are not going to – it's going to take time to get it done there. And all of a sudden, I think they were the best team in the West last year.
Oh, I do too. They were better than their record.
Correct. And they were more complete, more balanced in Purdue. Yeah. And unfortunately
they would have given Michigan – well, shoot, they would have had a rematch with Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. They played Michigan tougher than anyone in the conference.
And that was
including Ohio State.
Was that Michigan, correct?
Yes. They took him to the wire. If Bielema would have managed that game a little bit differently, not saying that he blew the game. He didn't blow the game because Michigan would have still had the ball. But he played – anyway, just to review it very quickly, they've got the ball. They've got a less than field goal lead. I think they lost by 1 or 2, so they were up by 1 or 2. They've got the ball with 4 minutes left, and they were treating the clock like there were 90 seconds left in the game. There's 4 minutes left in the game. They basically run, punt. And bad punt, they're in their own end of the field. So they basically set up a Michigan game-winning field goal. Michigan only needed like 1 first down to end the game. And they needed to be more aggressive, go after the first down, protect the lead.
Not making excuses for Brett Bielema, but let's also remember that he had just lost his mother that week.
Yeah.
Very difficult circumstance. The fact that he showed up to coach and they played as well as they did in those circumstances was incredible. That's why I'm
you like Brett.
Slow. I wasn't sold on that hire when they first hired him because I wasn't sold on what he did at Arkansas.
Yeah.
I know you've defended him at Arkansas and probably
like him.
So. Well, you do like him or you don't like him?
I do.
Yeah. No,
I think he's a really good coach.
What's not to like about him? I mean, what is not to like about him? He's a no nonsense guy. He's not a drama guy. He's obviously a very. Here's the thing about Brett Bielema. He loves the game of football. He loves his alma mater in Iowa, which tells me that he is a loyal person. And my guess is, as I've said all along, if that job opened up, if the Iowa job opened up, he would jump ship. And that's not the reason I like him. I'm just saying. I think what you said is true. And I've also, let's not forget, I've had a number of conversations with Coach Don Patterson about Brett because Don knows Brett well. And he has said nothing but good things about Brett Bielema as a person. He's a great person. So great addition to this conference. And you bring up Purdue and Illinois. I agree with you on Purdue. I don't know what Ryan Walters, now just before you know it, Mark, the Ryan Walters discuss, all of a sudden Purdue's going to be good next year. Like, wouldn't that just be the most Big Ten thing to happen? Like all of a sudden they're just good. Yeah. Losing all they did. So that could happen. What happens with Northwestern? I think that's a question.
They're a non-factor.
Okay. And we said that last year, but when we also put that little asterisk there and we said, well, we said this before and then it's backfired. Do we say that again now? Is it fair to say they could be really good because that's what Fitz does at times?
I hope so. I want them to come back. I like Pat Fitzgerald. We're running through some of the coaches that I enjoy and that I like and admire, both from a coaching standpoint and from what I know about them as people. So I like Pat Fitzgerald. I think he's an exceptional coach, but for whatever reason, that program has gotten to a place where they just have they they're coming off a 4-20 run the last two seasons, as you well know, and they have added one player in the transfer portal.
Why? Why?
I don't know if academics has something to do with it, but
Well,
why would you not be adding players in the transfer portal? You're
I have no
awful.
idea. I have no idea.
They have one of the best players going in the NFL draft. Skaronski, the left tackle. He's going to be a high NFL draft selection.
It's kind of like the Iowa situation 2 years ago along their offensive line. The fact that you can have a guy like Tyler Linderbaum and still stink. I mean, that's kind of what Purdue was, or Northwestern was last year. Wasn't it true they didn't win a game in the U.S.? Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
They were 1-11.
Yeah,
they won in Ireland.
Yes, against Nebraska. They couldn't win non-conference games against the likes of MAC teams and FCS teams, but they beat Nebraska
at home.
At home.
And he almost beat Ohio State, though.
Well,
anyways, we can get back on the depth chart conversation or whatever, but
yeah, we don't have to. It does bring up an idea for a couple things, folks. If you enjoy these kind of conversations and you've got recommendations or requests of conversations we can have, because of course we're going to focus on spring football and the spring, not game, but the final practice, whatever they call it, scrimmage. But as we tear through the summer, of course, we'll be looking for interesting ideas to carve up. But I do think at some point we should run through the Big Ten coaches and give our thoughts, and we will have the chat, of course, chime in on their thoughts about the coaches whether from a football standpoint that they back as being great coaches, or just from a personality standpoint, the ones that they like or don't like so much. I like that conversation, and then also I'm interested in TV ratings. I got in on this series. I started a series a few days ago because of the not to divert from Iowa, but for just a second, the Pac-12 still trying to establish media rights going forward and having all sorts of issues, apparently trying to get the dollar amount that they're looking for. So I dove into TV ratings to try to substantiate where I stand on the Pac-12 and some of the issues that they're having trying to salvage a rights deal, and then compared it to the Big 12 and now the ACC. And I think Big Ten fans are going to be rather happy if you're not a big TV ratings person, but you understand the importance of TV ratings. And I'm a guy that was at ESPN for 19 years, and I had access to any commercial log at any time. I could look up and see how much are we charging for spots during this Iowa Northwestern game. And, you can imagine the difference between an Iowa-Minnesota game that's getting 4.5 million views versus a Oregon State, Washington State game that's getting 1.5 million views, and what's being charged for advertising. So that's one of the reasons why the Big Ten just signed a $1.1 billion deal. We look at the TV ratings, just to give you one nugget, and we'll dive into it deeper in future weeks. At some point, the Big Ten and the SEC comprised the top 15 rated games in college football last year.
Rich keep getting richer. I mean, haven't we said that with? I mean, I think that's clear. A couple things. There's a reason why the Big Ten and the SEC have been successful in expansion. And, we knew, the Big Ten just landed this massive media rights deal, last year? That was not a surprise with expansion. But, I think it's clear that the SEC and the Big Ten has the most passionate of fan bases and the biggest brands. And when USC and UCLA join the conference, it's only going to help the cause. Now, I did have somebody when I was down in Southern California here not that long ago tell me that nobody down there cares about college football, which I viewed kind of, as an insult. I understand there's a lot of NBA fans down there with the Lakers and the Clippers, and that's ridiculous. USC, we know USC and UCLA are two of the biggest brands. USC is one of the biggest brands out there. So And was it you last week that told me that you think Washington's a top 15, top 20 program in the country? Yeah, and I don't agree with that. But anyways, those are different discussions for another day. We should here's what we should do someday, Mark. We should do a live draft on this show where we can draft a top 25 based on program strength, all encompassing. All right, based on program strength and projecting forward. If you were to build a super conference, like you could represent the SEC, I can represent the Big Ten, and we're building a super conference. We can have any teams in the country. We each get 25 teams.
I'm not representing the SEC. You are Corey Conference. I'm Mark Conference, and then we'll take it
okay, that's fine. But I think don't you think it's a good idea?
I'd love it. Sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
So,
and then
folks,
the winner has to eat a whole tray of Oreos.
The winner of what? Who's going to determine who won? The results of the next season?
No. Well, that's no, that's too long drawn out. I don't have the attention span for that. We each draft 25 teams, and then we put up our polls without names. We put up our polls drafted polls without our names on them. We put them up on social media. We combine votes, and we see who the fans think had the better conference.
So we're going to have to draft these in private. We can't come on here and draft because people are going to know.
I mean, sure. I guess that's true. That's true. I don't know that we got to figure out another way around that, because I think drafting on here would make it more interesting, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we could see what Roger Goodell's doing, and we can have him announce our picks. Do you think Roger would be up for that?
I would hope so. I would think that he would be. Sure. The power of the voice of college football combined with this ever-growing, emerging giant of a women's college basketball channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Is that what it is now, Mark? It's a women's college basketball channel. You know what I could do, Mark? I could start launching sub-channels like you do. Featured channels, and I could be...
I'm sure you could.
I could do...
I would do better than some of mine.
I get to figure out how to do that, but women's basketball with From the Hawkeye of the Storm. That's what a channel could be called. Or, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. We could do that for each sport. Then I could hire people to host shows, but then I'd be copying you. So anyways.
It's not, that idea did not originate with me. So there would be any kind of appropriation there that would be violated in any such way. Yes, John, thank you for reminding me. May is going to be debate month at the Voice of College Football. So any debates that you can come up with, folks, overall, but certainly related to Iowa football, then let us know, and we will search whether Corey and I can have the conversation if we believe that it's a debate for the two of us to have, or if we need to go outside and find someone that can debate the other side, we'll do that.
Tight end debate is a tight end U debate, and are you gonna have a bunch of cornerback U debates and tight end U debates and linebacker U debates and all this stuff?
We can. For whatever positions you believe that you can make a valid argument.
So what if you have how many days in May? 30?
Yes. 31.
What if you did a live debate every day of the month?
Okay.
30 debates in the month. That's all you did. That's all you did in the month of May. No, your spring football coverage is specifically to your team channels.
It's a good thought.
I'm in a creative mood today, Mark. As it relates to content.
I'll take any idea you can throw my way.
Wait, do we want to talk about the depth charts before we?
Sure, we can run through the depth charts. Do you have them in front of you? Is there anything that stood out to you?
I do. Do you want me to share the depth chart?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that here. I will see if I can find it here. looking through. So I did get the spring prospectus. Appreciate Iowa. You probably got that too, Mark. You should have that in your inbox. See if I can find the depth chart here. Okay, here it is. So this is obviously a pre-spring depth chart. Part of the reason why I didn't jump on talking about this sooner is because I really don't know that it means a whole lot. But I'll go ahead and share my screen so everybody can see. Okay. So hopefully you can see that, Mark. I hope.
Yeah, I should have grabbed my glasses. But anyway,
let's do this.
Do you know what date that came down?
This was on the 22nd.
Oh, okay.
So last Wednesday. So yeah, this was not out when we were on the show last week. So it's a good time to talk about it. I mentioned wide receiver, so hopefully everybody can see the screen here. As I said, the latest is that Jacob Bostic is banged up. Obviously, they're strong at tight end. We've discussed this. Luke Lachey, Eric All, Addison Estringa. And for the record, as I said at the outset, I don't believe that this depth chart should be read into by any means. I think it could look completely different at certain positions. I mean, I think we all assumed that this would be what the tight end depth chart would look like, given Estringa's rise last year, given the transfer of Eric All. Obviously, the line is one to follow. You got Mason Richmond, who's now going into his third year starting. Behind him, Jack Dotzler, kind of an interesting one. He's a true freshman. I don't think he saw the field at all last year. He, of course, preserved the red shirt, but he is a true sophomore this year, or I should say a redshirt freshman, second-year guy out of Wisconsin. So, is that just Iowa? When I saw that, I'm thinking, did they just throw his name up there just to throw it up there? Or maybe he really progressed during bowl practice, bowl prep. That's possible. Connor Colby listed as your left guard. Tyler Ellsbury played a lot last year. Logan Jones struggled at times. Michael Myslinski, no surprises there. Rusty Feth, not listed on here. Rusty, of course, is the transfer from Miami, Ohio. It sounds like he's coming here to play guard. So he'll compete probably at right guard. I don't know how confident the staff is in Bo Stevens. I know he played a lot at right guard last year. Jennings Dunker is a weight room freak. But let's be honest, nobody latched on to either one of those guard positions last year. And then Nick DeYoung listed as your right tackle with Dejon Parker backing him up. If I was to guess, it'll be Parker starting. I think you love if Nick DeYoung can progress, but they got Dejon Parker out of Saginaw Valley for a reason. I would think to start. And so he's listed as your right tackle. But again, I think some of this, not listing some of your transfers as starters or listing them as second or third string, part of that is the guy's just got here. How could you possibly list him ahead of somebody who's been here until you see him on the football field? So that's what we're seeing right now at spring practice. Some of this is going to change, certainly. You see Deontay Vines, Alec Wick on the other side of the field. McNamara, Labus, Deacon Hill, in that order. No surprises there. Would not be shocked if Deacon Hill ends up being the starter, because I don't know that the staff loves Joey Labus. I know he played in the bowl game last year and looked okay, but as much as they struggled last year, they never once turned to Joey Labus even to give him a series until they absolutely had to in the bowl game. So we'll see if Labus stays past spring. I would assume he does, but if Deacon Hill takes a jump ahead of Labus, maybe Labus takes off and looks for better pastures. Caleb Johnson, LaShawn Williams, Jazzy Patterson, strong running back group, and then Eli Miller replacing Monty Bottabom at fullback. So any thoughts before we look at
well, not about this specific depth chart, but have you ever done any kind of breakdown in regards to what states produce the most Iowa players? Have you ever looked at maybe the last 10 years?
I've never done videos on it. I mean, I could probably just off the top of my head tell you it's Iowa, Illinois, and probably Wisconsin.
Yeah, seems like it.
But yeah, I mean, that would be a fair topic. Obviously, Iowa's going to win that battle, but I will give them credit. They've had some nice ads from some states they don't typically do great in. One being, a couple being in California. I know Spencer Petras is not a fan favorite, but he was a 3-year starter here, and he's a San Rafael, California kid. And then TJ Hall, 4-star kid who was committed to a couple different Pac-12 schools. They got him here. So, and they've done some work out in Colorado as well. Ohio, I mean, Caleb Johnson's an Ohio native. So they've stretched out, and of course with Florida, Jazzy and Patterson and Jarrett Bowie coming in this year with Liddell Betts and Kelton Copeland both having Florida connections, that helps. Do you want me to move down to defense, Mark?
Sure.
Let me see if I can find. I guess this is defense right here. So you've got Deontay Craig and Max Llewellyn listed. Remember, Lucas Van Ness heading to the draft. He had eligibility remaining, likely a first or second round draft pick. Noah Shannon comes back for his final year. Aaron Gray's listed as his backup. Logan Lee, hard to believe he's still around, married dude, but he'll give him good snaps. Y.A. Black is back as well. And then Joe Evans, Ethan Hurkett. I mean, that's a pretty, I don't want to say stacked because you did lose Van Ness, but man, I don't have too many concerns about that group, Mark. And that's not listing Ontario Thompson, the kid from Iowa Western, who I think very well could play. I think probably will play. That Brian Allen, who's a 4-star, came in last spring, enrolled early. He has a full year of development under his belt. And I'm probably missing somebody that I'm just not thinking of right now. That's a pretty solid group. I think if you had asked me who would you rather get back, Van Ness or the trio that is Shannon, Evans, and Lee, I'd probably go Shannon, Evans, and Lee. Even though Van Ness is probably going to be a first or second round draft pick, the depth that Kelvin Bell and Phil Parker, what they've lived off of here with the depth up front, it's kind of the lifeblood of this defense. So I think they're more than fine along that defensive line. Obviously, Sebastian Castor had a really good performance in the Music City Bowl. There's a couple names people probably aren't familiar with. Kelby Tellender, a kid from the Iowa City area, and then Jackson Rexroth, who I believe was on a safety depth chart early last year, maybe in spring of last year. He's also an Eastern Iowa kid. So, of course, we'll see how they do this because Cooper DeJean at one time was listed as a cash guy, and now he's listed as your starting left corner. They, of course, lose Riley Moss. You lose Terry Roberts. So, corner, they're a bit thinner at corner. My guess is Cooper will stay at corner. Castro looked really good in the bowl game. I guess the question is then who is the linebacker that's going to be replacing Justin Jacobs, who's off to Oregon? Could it be a guy like Justice Sullivan, who's not listed on the depth chart? We've talked about him. They've got the kid from Virginia, Nick Jackson, coming in as well. So he's a name certainly to watch for. And then, of course, you see Jay Higgins, Jaden Harrell, who was a 4-star at high school, Carson Shire, and then Kyler Fisher, who's an old guy, walk on, but has played meaningful snaps. So I'm not real concerned about any of those positions. I kind of said the same thing last year. I'm concerned with depth at corner because injuries just seem to always ransack that group every year here. With Cooper, they probably don't lose the Nebraska game if Cooper plays, Mark. They probably don't. I don't know that, but a big part of that game was the breakdowns in the back end from, unfortunately, true freshman TJ Hall and the kid from Humboldt. So, you never know, but Cooper DeJean, TJ Hall, their health will be really important. And of course, you see Jamari Harris. Remember, he was out all of last year. Deshaun Lee listed as a starting backup right corner. Belleville, Michigan kid. I've interviewed him before. Don't know a lot about him because he's never been listed on the depth chart. I don't remember seeing much out of him at fall camp. I think he's kind of been buried. But he's listed here, so maybe that's an indication that he progressed during the offseason. And then as far as safety is concerned, you got a 5-star and 4 or 5-star and Xavier Wampa. Castro listed there as well. Quinn Schulte, who played really well last year. And then another redshirt freshman, Cohen and Tringer, the former Central Michigan commit, listed as your backup free. And then as far as specialists are concerned, probably the best kicker in the Big Ten Conference in Drew Stevens. Is that fair to say, Mark? Somebody went after me last week because I said probably.
That he is probably the best kicker?
Yeah, somebody said, well, he's not probably. He is the best kicker.
I'd have to review who's coming back.
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah, sure.
But
I don't think it's a slam dunk. Now, I don't know what happened to the Rutgers punter, but Torrey Taylor is the best punter in the nation.
Right. Yeah. No, that's what I say. Special teams.
Yeah.
They're stacked. Let me read you exactly what this individual said.
While you're looking that up, I am still fascinated by the composition of the 2 deep roster. I I can almost guarantee that we could not find another team in the Big Ten that is concentrated as much in one state and basically two states, one primarily, of course, the home state of Iowa, and then a second state of Illinois than this two deep roster. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons is if you go to the programs that are better than Iowa, they're all over the country because they're pulling in whatever they want. If you go below Iowa, those programs aren't good enough to get just their best players in state. So they're going all over because they've got to go to the next level and go somewhere else.
And let's remember, even the guys who aren't listed on this two deep, a lot of those guys are from those two states as well. I mean, I'm just thinking of the class coming in this year. They got a lot of Iowa guys coming in as true freshmen this year.
This two deep is like 80% Iowa and like 10% Illinois.
This isn't new, Mark.
It's crazy.
I know.
Never realized that.
Yeah. I don't know what else to. I've lived in Iowa my whole life.
I like it. It's great.
I still could never tell you where Farmville or Odebolt is. I have no idea. I mean, I've looked
you've
them up.
Not only lived there, you've covered the state.
Well, to an extent, I guess, but
from a news standpoint, and then sports.
Yeah. So, well, like I say, you're right about that, and they've had some success, I guess, in Missouri, but they don't do a ton of Missouri either. Bo Stevens is a Blue Springs kid, and you see Eli Miller's from Colorado, and it's basically, you're right. It's basic. Now the transfer portal changes that a little bit, right? They've added guys from all over the place via the portal, and that's probably going to affect Iowa more than other teams because, like you said, some of those other teams are already getting players from all over the place. Iowa, you're not going to be, it's different when you're recruiting the transfer portal, I would have to think. The response to my comment last year about Drew Stevens probably being the best kicker in the Big Ten was this, and I give this individual the benefit of the doubt. Let me find the comment here. Yeah, so he was Drew Stevens was a Lou Groza Award semifinalist, right? Yeah, semifinalist. He did set the Iowa all-time field goal record as a freshman, or for a freshman, I should say. He was second team All Big Ten, Mark, behind Moody, the Michigan kid, right? And I don't remember what schools these guys played for, but Ruggles, Trickett, and Ryland. I don't remember kickers in this conference, but those guys are all gone.
Yeah, I was trying to find a kickers list coming back to college football, but
but based on history, Bryce Stevens is probably projected as the best kicker in the Big Ten. And when you have a year like he did, what was he, like 16 of 18, some ridiculous number like that? I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't project him there. He's got a chance to be really good. I think he already is really good. Got a big leg, really accurate. What's ironic about Drew Stevens, Mark, his name is Drew, and he never draws the ball. Like, his kicks are straight. It's really hard. Most kickers have a draw, or maybe they fade, but it's like a golf swing. Rarely do you see a guy who can just hit the ball straight, and that's what he does with his field goals.
Yeah, and it's going to be important to have him, most likely, this season.
Yeah.
Because of the kind of games that are played.
Let's be honest. It's amazing the fact, we can rip on the offense all we want. It's amazing the fact that Iowa has been able to survive such abysmal offenses, and yet we can specifically pinpoint how they've survived, Mark. And not only is it the tremendous defensive play year after year, it's the incredible kicking game that they thrive off of. And you think about the place kickers they've had. We've discussed this. Miguel Racinos, Keith Duncan, Caleb Shudak, Drew Stevens. They have had an incredible stretch. And I give LeVar Woods credit, right? As a special teams coordinator, I think he deserves some credit. Charlie Jones was a part of special teams as well. But they have been excellent in that unit. And that's been a big part of being able to still win 8 to 9 games a year despite the offense.
Yeah, as our Ohio State fan Daniel mentions here, bringing up Noah Ruggles, painful to Ohio State fans. He missed the 50-yarder that most likely would have won not just that game, but the national championship.
That wasn't even close. It
No,
wasn't even
no,
close.
no.
He
He
just hit
hit it
that or what?
poorly. Yeah,
What?
he's a good kicker, really good kicker. He had some numbers close to what Drew Stevens had,
So did you
something in
think was
that
it a bad
range.
snap, or did you look back at that closer, or
I
what was it?
I've looked at it. I'm not a kicking expert. He didn't. Yeah, the timing was slightly off in terms of placement of the ball at the point that he stepped, and it wasn't right. He was there too early. Yeah, kind of
Mark
thing.
is as Ray Finkel's mom said, "Were the laces out?"
Yes.
So, I remember I remember sitting there watching that, a couple months ago and thinking, I just knew he was gonna miss that kick. You just for me, I don't know, as an Ohio State fan in that situation, are you in that situation, were you positive? How are you feeling heading
Okay,
into that
for me personally, and I think there is a level of pessimism or optimism in each one of us. There is a war waging in each one of us, and people tend to be either or.
Yep.
Like not 100% one way, but one of the two usually manifests it. I am the optimist. I I never think Ohio State's going to lose a football game. Like I never turn on an Ohio State game thinking they're going to lose. It just doesn't even barely cross my mind.
Part of that, not to take away from your loyalty, Mark, but part of that is because they very rarely lose.
Lose. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's a little different when you're like, "Well, I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm an eternal optimist." Well, here's a Rutgers fan who says I'm an eternal pessimist because they've won 1 game in the last.
Exactly. I'm not watching a team that's going 7-5 every year thinking they're going to win every game and they lose 5 times. No. So even the Georgia game, I thought once they got into the game and I saw, okay, they've brought it tonight. They're focused. Like I either thought that they might not be ready for that game and not be focused and get blown out. But once I knew, okay, because I thought they can match their talent. So they're going to be in this game. And I thought that they would win the game. But yeah, they did not put him in a good position from 50 yards.
And I
There's
am
no
a
point.
little hesitant. I am a little hesitant to agree with your statement about that kick was probably for the national championship. I think that's a little. I know we all look at what happened in the national championship and we conclude that TCU was just overmatched, but until I see that game against a Ohio State team that looked totally different team than Georgia, I'm hesitant to assume that Ohio State was just going to run away with that one. You're
And you're
probably
logical in stating that. I have no issue with that because I would be making the same statement in a number of other scenarios that other people would be assuming, but I will still make that assumption that I just no. Do I think Ohio State would have won the game 65-7? Yeah, 65. Oh my word. We had a national championship game that went 65-7. I think Ohio
okay.
State wins that game like 45-21.
That could be, but I mean, let's be honest. Give Max Duggan and that offense a lot of credit. They scored a lot of points in certain moments. Well, they just scored a lot of points when they needed to throughout the season, and that's just a really. We know how good that Georgia defense is and has been for so long, and Ohio State's defense was better last year, no question
Yeah,
about it.
it was
But just
better
not
than
great.
average. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Corey and I are here every week talking Hawkeyes football with all of you every Tuesday at 4:30 Central. Make it on back next Tuesday. Bring a friend or two or 50 with you. What do we got? About 80 on the line. Let's bring 10 friends and get to 800. Why don't we do that next week? And we will wrap up spring. No, we will not wrap up spring football. Why do I think football would be wrapped up? I'm getting that confused with the basketball situation. Corey is going to be laser focused on women's basketball for the next, what he hopes to be the next like 5 to 6 days with a national championship game on Sunday night. But of course, they've got to get by the powerhouse that is South Carolina. And that's been going on for quite some time now with South Carolina, correct?
They are a dominant force, defending champions. Like I said, haven't lost all season. I did put out check out the preview I put out earlier today. They're gonna have to play perfect to beat them. I thought Maryland played pretty well it was last night, Monday night, and they were down 20 in the fourth quarter. It's just It's going to be a monumental task, but who doesn't like that opportunity, Mark, to think this is a chance to absolutely have the biggest win of the history of the program. And it will be one of the biggest wins in the history of Iowa athletics. If they win this game and get to the national championship game, without question. And I understand some people's loyalty is to football and to men's basketball, and nobody cares about women's basketball or wrestling, whatever the case may be. But to win this game, make the first national title game in the history of the program, it will be huge. And to beat South Carolina in doing so would be massive. So I've never been more hyped, excited for a women's basketball game in my life.
As you set up that challenge, it reminded me of roughly 10 years ago. I was leaving for the airport and I received a text from someone, and they should have known that I didn't care. But anyway, UConn was going on one of those incredible runs, that they went on forever, winning almost every game for however many years and all the championships and everything. But they were an undefeated team in the Final Four. They lost to Mississippi State like on a last second shot about 10 years ago. And I just remember somebody texting me this. I was like headed to the airport for a midnight flight or something. And I'm thinking, why are you texting me this? I don't care.
What's cool to me, well, not cool, but it's interesting. You lived in Connecticut right? You lived in Connecticut during the Dynasty era?
Yeah, from 2001 up until just a year and a half ago, just six months ago. Yes.
That was a dominant, one of the more dominant dynasties in the history of sports.
I would argue that based on my knowledge of other sports, which is fairly strong, I can't think of a more dominant run, barely losing games and just continuing to win championships with one loss or zero losses over and over and over. Not that I have much recollection of it because I didn't watch it.
Right. But you were around a lot. I mean,
yeah. I was working at ESPN and we covered the women's tournament. So I had to be heavily involved in the women's tournament.
How close did you live not to Bristol? Is it
Storrs, Connecticut?
Oh, Storrs.
Yeah. About an hour.
Okay.
From there. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I was. You excited that the UConn men are in the Final Four?
Why would I be excited about that?
I don't know. You lived in Connecticut. I don't know.
No, my rooting interest is to one team.
Okay.
I don't have a second team. I'm not one of these people that have a third team, a second team, an NFC team, an AFC. No, one team. I root for one team.
I get you.
But I'm not knocking that. I don't agree with it, but I'm not knocking it. So, all right, folks. Appreciate you being here. Hawkeyes Live next Tuesday. In the meantime, lock in on Corey and everything he's got going with the women's team playing on Friday night against South Carolina. See you soon.